Hello, Scott Farkas here, doing a quick video update. Today we're going to talk about pre-op diet, but just to kind of start things off, a little progress report. I am 3.5 weeks post-op. I'm going through my stats real quick. I am 6'2". My high weight, which was the day before liquid diet, was 304 pounds. My surgery weight was 284 pounds, which was 1 week later. My current weight, 3.5 weeks post-op, is 263 pounds. So a whopping 41 pounds in 4.5 weeks. So doing good. I did have a small little 3 or 4 day stall where I just stayed the same weight or gained an ounce or two per day, kind of a thing. Could have just been water. I don't know. Feel like I'm not eating anything, so I don't know how I possibly could actually be overeating. We'll talk about what my diet is and carbs and calorie counts and all that in a different video. But things are going really well. I have all my energy back. I went through a phase for about, three weeks where I just felt, maybe I didn't feel tired all the time, but at least once a day I felt like I was so tired. I almost was dizzy, and I'd lay down and sleep for like an hour and then get up and be kind of groggy for an hour, and then I was fine again. Doctor said it's normal. It's a low calorie adjustment kind of a thing. Obviously I'm watching my hydration and protein and all that good stuff. Yeah, some of those fun things in adjusting to a new life. But this past week has been phenomenal. Not tired. I don't get tired. I don't feel like I have to crash and sleep anymore. And I'm still eating, minuscule amounts of food and carbs and everything else. So really happy with how things are going. I feel great. My incisions are almost all healed up, and looking forward to a slightly wider variety of food that I can consume, and looking forward to doing a little heavier working out as we move along past, into more like the 6 week area. And anyway, enough about that. Let's talk about pre-op diet. Most of you probably already know the whys and what a lot of that consists of, but some of you might not. So I'm going to go through it really quickly. If that's even possible with me. Most of my videos are way too long, and I'm sorry. We're going to talk about the whys. We're going to talk about a couple things that I thought were helpful to me that weren't necessarily listed on the sheet that your doctor gives you. I'm going to talk about the before the pre-op diet, some things you can do to prepare, and then I also want to talk about some things that make pre-op diet a little easier. It doesn't have to be miserable just because you're having liquid. I think some of the advice we get in pre-op diet is bad advice, to be quite honest, in the types of things that we consume. Let's talk about the whys. There's a few key reasons you want to do the pre-op diet. Number one is your liver. Your liver is right above your stomach, and your liver has to be in a healthy, smaller iteration of itself for the doctor to be able to work underneath that liver on your stomach. So part of that pre-op diet is to get a lot of the fat out of it. And you probably have all heard this, but if you're obese, you have fatty liver. So that 1 to 4 weeks of liquid pre-op diet is designed to get the fat out of your liver, as your internal fats tend to be consumed more quickly than sometimes of our outer abdominal fat, and to get that liver shrunk down. The other thing the pre-op diet does is it gets rid of a lot of the inner abdominal fat, again, as it consumes more quickly on the inside. Getting rid of inner abdominal fat makes it, just like shrinking the liver, creates better visibility for the doctor. I don't know about you, but when a doctor's cutting me open and working on my insides, I want them to have the best visibility possible. So one of multiple reminders: do not cheat. That's rule number one. The pre-op diet: do not cheat. Get that liver shrunk down so that your doctor can see what he or she is working on in there, and get that inner abdominal fat out. The other thing that is important with the pre-op diet is it reduces your comorbidites, which are morbidites mean things that can cause death and or kill you, which are going to be like your high blood pressure, blood sugar, all that kind of stuff. So when you go on that pre-op diet, you're going to have reduced blood sugar and reduced blood pressure and cholesterol and all those things that are really, really bad, terrible to add into a surgical procedure. There is one other reason that I want to talk about for the pre-op diet, and that's to make sure that you can actually follow the rules, and that this food addiction that we all have in one way or another isn't so bad that we can't follow a set of rules, particularly post-op. So if you do a pre-op diet for 2 or 3 weeks and you cheat, that's bad, but it's not going to kill you. It might make your surgery more difficult. It might get your surgery canceled. But post-op, when your surgery is all stapled up and high risk and everything is not necessarily healed up and sealed yet, if you decide you want to break the liquid diet that will ensue for weeks after your procedure, you risk rupturing your stomach, which means you also risk that is a critical problem that can lead to death. So you've got to be able to have your food addiction under control, and that 1 to 3 weeks of pre-op liquid diet is a good way to test to make sure that you can live the letter of the law and that you can do what you need to. Very important. So let's talk about before pre-op diet really fast. One of the things that is required before you have your procedure, and as you go into your pre-op diet, is you cannot consume alcohol or caffeine. Let's talk a little bit about those two things. Caffeine's a really big one. The thing with caffeine is caffeine creates stomach acid, and it's a diuretic, so it's hard to maintain hydration, and it creates stomach acid. Again, this is a VSG channel, a vertical sleeve channel. When you have a sleeve in that little teeny tiny stomach, the last thing you want is more acid in that little teeny space. So consuming caffeine in coffee or anything else is going to create more acid, and you risk having a serious acid reflux problem post-op. Most people should consider completely abandoning caffeine for the rest of their lives if they're having this procedure, because regardless of what form it's in, it's not just a soda thing, which obviously expands and creates pain, and it's another thing you got to give up. Soda, add that number 3, that you should never ever drink again the rest of your life if you have this procedure, which I'm going to be okay with. Caffeine's bad. Alcohol also really bad post-surgery. The amount that you absorb of alcohol creates some pretty serious problems with intoxication. The other thing that if you read a lot of the statistics, people are susceptible to become major alcoholics should they consume alcohol after having a vertical sleeve. Extremely addictive, and you have all these substitute addictions that I'm sure you've read about. If not, go read about vertical gastric sleeve and addictions post-op, that as we try to find something to be our new vice, I guess, besides food. So let's talk about those things. The last thing you want to do is try to give those things up while you're also giving up food. It is highly advisable to get off of soda, get off of caffeine, and get off of alcohol before you go into your liquid diet. Caffeine's a big one. I keep coming back to that one because of withdrawals are really pretty terrible. And if you think about the withdrawal symptoms of caffeine, it's not just a headache, and sometimes the bigger withdrawals don't kick in for up to 72 hours after you quit caffeine. Things like fatigue, sleepiness, depression, tiredness, anxiety, nervousness, concentration impairment, muscle pain, stiffness, chills, flu-like symptoms. So that was something I did not want to deal with while I'm also trying to do a liquid diet where you're confusing calorie adjustment with, let's just call it drug withdrawals. So one of the things that a good mentor told me was get off of it weeks before you go onto your liquid diet. It's a really good idea because I remember getting off caffeine for me was a nightmare. It was a week of nonstop headaches and feeling like I had the flu and everything that, like they say, it can happen. And it really didn't truly kick in until several days later. The headaches obviously come on pretty quick. But get off of caffeine, get off of soda, get off of alcohol. It will make your liquid diet so much easier as you're not dealing with a bunch of withdrawal symptoms on top of calorie withdrawal. We'll just call it that. PreOp diet is typically a bunch of low-calorie drinks mixed with protein shakes. People always have their favorites. My particular poison when it comes to the protein shakes were Premier Protein. I actually already was drinking them once in a while, and then it just so happened to be the same protein shake recommended by my doctor. Premier Protein is really awesome because it's only, if I remember right, it's like 5 carbs, it's 30 grams of protein, and when you're a male, you have to, I guess it has a lot to do with height, but in general, my doctor had a set of rules for men and a set of rules for women. But as a male, they want me to have 80 grams of protein a day. So I drink 3 of those a day. I'm at 90 protein, and then I got to get my 86 ounces minimum of liquids per day on top of that. So that was a really nice foundation. They're only 160 calories a piece, so you're at 480 calories on 3 shakes, when my doctor's restriction was 1,000 calories. So I had another 500 calories and no more than 70 carbs to play with in my diet. So then the rest of the diet is where it gets interesting. Every doctor will tell you the same thing, at least that I've seen. They say drink chicken broth and beef broth. There's lots of bouillon cubes involved. What I found is that was some of the worst advice I've ever had in my life. Drinking chicken broth out of a box or a can, I'm just going to tell you, it's as disgusting as it sounds if you've never done this before. It's plain, it's boring. Let me tell you one thing, I didn't get fat because I ate food that sucked. I loved food. I still think I like food somewhere deep down inside me somewhere. But, the last thing I'm going to be drinking is a plain old chicken broth out of a Swanson can. So let me tell you what I found that makes this part of the diet a bit more enjoyable. I'm going to start with one of my favorite Vietnamese foods. Some people call it pho. It's pronounced pho. And it's typically a delicious beef broth that is full of rice noodles and cilantro and basil and onion and all kinds of great things that are in it. You can't have the beef or the noodles or anything else that's in that, but when a really good pho is created, again, food used to be an art form in my life. When it was created, has lots of seasonings and spices and all kinds of things that are sometimes cooked into that broth for 12, 16, 24 hours. And a lot of times a really good pho is created with like a brisket or a ribeye or something, big huge piece of meat that's cooked in actual boiled into that broth. And the output is if you're going to drink just a plain broth on something that's darn near calorie free, this is a great way to go. I would go to my favorite Vietnamese restaurant and just order the broth. I'd have them withhold the onions and the other stuff in it. Just give me the broth, and it is amazing. much better than anything you're going to have in a can. And the other thing is, instead of it being like $10 for that, little bowl of broth, it's usually just a couple dollars. So really, really great option. Some people have told me, well, it's really high in salt. Pho is a really salty food, but so is all broth. If you throw a bouillon cube, I mean, half of that cube is salt. So it doesn't matter what kind of broth you're having. You may as well enjoy yourself. So go to your favorite Vietnamese place, get some pho. It's fantastic, and I think you'll thank me for it if you have the time. But it's got to be a good place. Some places, they're not all Vietnamese places are not created equal, and they don't do it quite as well. Number 2 is go get some egg drop soup. Again, skip the chicken broth, and if you have room in your calories for the week, and be careful. A lot of egg drop soup has corn in it, as a base. If you find that's the case, it usually settles to the bottom. Just eat off the top. But that egg drop soup is really low calorie, really low carb, and it's full of egg whites in it, and it's a great source of protein. And if you go to the right place, again, you got to shop around and know who does something as silly as egg drop soup. Some places do it better than others, and some places really have some decent flavors. Sometimes I'd put a little soy sauce in, and I even found myself at one place, I put a little bit of like Asian mustard, Chinese mustard in the egg drop soup just to give it a little something extra. And I thought that was fantastic. I probably did that 2-3 times during that pre-op diet and into my post-op too. That's been a kind of a nice thing I do probably once a week. Just getting a little protein and mixing things up a little bit. Again, when we're comparing things to cans and bouillon cubes, it's ridiculous. Another great one, French onion soup. Find you a really nice French restaurant or a Cajun restaurant and order the French onion soup. One thing that I did is I would order it. I'd let them actually put the cheese and the stuff in it on the top, because what you get is a lot of transfer of flavors. First thing I'd do when I would get the French onion soup is I'd pull the cheese and the crouton off the top, and I would just go for the broth. Usually the onions were in it. There's no way to separate that, and most restaurants don't want to strain it for you, so you eat around them and let them settle. And if they start building up, I would just pull them up, drain them on the side of the bowl, and kind of just consume the broth. Even some of the just like the national chains like Mimi's, if you have Mimi's in your area, really nice French onion broth. They won't discount it obviously for you, so for a small little bowl of their broth, you're still paying $7-8. But hey, I was spending $10 a day just for lunch, eating at fairly amazing places, leading to my obesity before that. So $8, I'm gonna just once in a while, if you do it just on occasion, it's a great broth that doesn't taste like some bouillon cube. So here's another one that's really fantastic, and this one you're probably gonna stick your nose up, but don't knock it till you tried it. After a few days, a lot of things start tasting better than they did in the past. And that is top ramen. Not the actual ramen itself, but as you'll notice, there's like 20 different kinds of top ramen, and they all have different flavors. So what I would do is I would cook the top ramen with the seasoning packet in 2 cups of water, and I would just let those noodles cook, and I'd overcook them, when they get soggy, where like a normal human being wouldn't eat ramen noodles. Most normal human beings don't eat them anyway, but the ramen noodles actually have some nice flavor in them. So I would cook kind of that flavor into the broth. I found that there is a creamy chicken. It's still top ramen. It's still just a powder packet. It's not actually creamy. There's nothing creamy about it. It's just, there's no, flour or anything in it. It's just there's a mild thickener that makes it even less than the consistency of like egg drop soup, but this creamy one is a little thicker. So you have that with the noodles. Then the other thing I would do is I would put garlic powder in that. You can add garlic powder to just about any one of those top ramen flavors, But the nice thing is then you can mix it up. There's like 3 or 4 different flavors. It's better than a bouillon cube. You've got a little bit of this noodle flavoring in the broth, and honestly I found that it was fantastic. It was really nice to mix it up and not be eating the same things all the time. One thing that I really hated about pre-op, and I still hate now in post-op, is the artificial sweeteners. I can only handle so much artificial sweetener. You know, I tried the Propel and the Vita Zero and the G2, which actually has a bunch of calories in it. It's like 60 calories or some 50 calories in one of those, and the carbs mess with my day, so I hate the G2s on top of that. But artificial sweeteners really drive me nuts, and I'm sick of them. I drink a lot of water with electrolytes in it. Every once in a while I try, rather than doing like a G2, I'll do like a coconut water, which is, you know, again, sometimes that's 50 to 70 calories. Carbs tend to still be pretty low. You also get natural electrolytes in those coconut water. So keep coconut water as a, you know, maybe a once a day, and try to keep the amount down to keep the calories and carbs within check. You know, with your diet, again, your doctor's going to have a very specific set of carbs and calories and fats and, you know, all of that. So don't cheat. As a reminder, number 2 or 3, but don't cheat. Sometimes your doctor will say you can have soups during the liquid diet. Better advice I've had is stay away from the soups, because they're high in carbs and high in sugar, and sometimes we tell ourselves we need something we don't really need. You know, good advice I got from my doctor was avoid them if at all possible, because of the carbs and sugars and everything in them, and try to stick to the broths and things. And hopefully some of the things, the broth options that I've shared here, will be helpful, so you can avoid like grabbing a can of Campbell's chicken noodle soup and kind of blending it up a little bit. Stay away from that if you can, to give yourself the best chance for success. I think that about covers it. So I hope that was helpful. And again, good luck if you're looking into this procedure. It's been fantastic. I haven't regretted anything even for a second, and feeling really good about the way things are going. Thanks again.